Welcome, everybody. How are you today? We're so grateful so many of you are here with us today during our inaugural webinar for the KDA Creative Core. It's going to kind of take a little bit more time here to let everybody else into the room. We have a large group joining us. We're thrilled that you're all here. Just a couple of housekeeping items as we get going. We will be accepting Q&As today. However, we're going to address all of the questions that you might have towards the end of the session. So we're going to get through our introductions. We'll get through the webinar hosted by the California Healthy Places Index. And then at the end, my colleague Whitney will be addressing all of the questions that you have. So please load your questions into the Q&A. Whitney will be moderating them and she'll be helping us to get them all answered towards the end of the session. Additionally, this session is being recorded. So in the event you have to leave for any reason or you're not able to make a future webinar, these will be available for you on demand on the KDA Creative Core website. And we will also be having ASL services available to you. Our ASL translator is just running a few behind, but she will be jumping in as soon as she's here. Those will be available to you should you need translation services. So for those of you that I don't know, my name is Andrea Hansen. I am the Executive Director of the Kern Dance Alliance, and I am the Program Director for the KDA Creative Core. It is an honor to be the stewards of this monumental moment in the history of the Central Valleys when it comes to arts funding. And we are just so delighted that the arts are part of the solution, and they will be truly used to make an impact on the lives of Californians living in our communities. From here, I'm going to start to give all of my colleagues an opportunity to introduce themselves to you. Today is really about giving you an opportunity to put names to our faces. We realize up until now, it's been a very digital experience, reading a lot of text. We know the guidelines are a lot to review. There's a lot to review on the website, but today is about having a personal experience with us as well. Many of our staff and our consultants are going to be here to help you along the way and to navigate this process all the way to the finish line. So as I mentioned, my name is Andrea Hansen. I first and foremost come to this work as an artist. I am in the dance discipline, and my mind is automatically wired to work in steps. And so that is why this process is really step oriented for all of us. We can't get to the grand jeté until we do the tombe pas de bourrée. And this entire process is going about leading you through all of the steps to get to that grand finale of hopeful funding for all of your projects. So with that said, as I come to this work as an artist, I'm now an arts administrator. I co-founded the Kern Dance Alliance. I have worked in education and nonprofit arts industries for over 2 decades, and I have been also writing art grants in the arts for nearly 2 decades. So I have a lot of information that I can't wait to share with all of you, and that will become more clear during our webinar on Friday when we when we dive deeper into creating your proposals and navigating the grant technology. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to my colleague, Miss Whitney Pasquale, and she'll be talking a little bit about herself and the role she's playing with the Core.
Oh, can you hear me? Okay, my name is Whitney Pasquale. I am excited to be the KDA Creative Core Program Coordinator. I have been working alongside Andrea Hansen and many others for the past, 7-8 years with Kern Dance Alliance. So we've been very excited about the work that we have done with Kern Dance Alliance, and now as we're transitioning into the KDA Creative Core to be able to offer so many more arts opportunities to our community and our surrounding community. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Whitney. And from here, I will jump on over to David, our KDA Creative Core IT Director.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. My name is David Milazzo. I'm the IT Director for the KDA Creative Core. I'm also the founder and principal of Macroscopic, an Apple consultancy located here in Bakersfield. And we help businesses succeed with Apple technology all around California, the US, and Canada. I am thrilled to be working alongside Andrea and the entire KDA-CC team to deliver a wonderful experience to our grantees. So please look for our tech webinar coming up this Friday. Andrea and I will be giving some guidance in the tech space on how to work with our grants platform and maybe just some general technology assistance for those that have interest. And we'll also give you some understanding of how to reach out to me directly and set up some one-on-one time. We want you to be prepared for a very successful experience. So glad to have your participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And before we launch into more people from the KDA Creative Core team, it's my honor to introduce you all to Man Fan from the California Arts Council, who is one of several individuals at the state level who are helping to facilitate this process. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the California Arts Council for giving KDA this opportunity to usher in this really incredible moment in our history. Hi, Man, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, everybody. I wish to bring greetings from the California Arts Council. It is an exciting time for us at the council, particularly through this California Creative Core project, which we from the council seek to reach artists in all corners of our great state, and we can't be more than we're very thrilled that we're teaming up with KDA and under the leadership of Andrea here to reach the communities in the vast area of the Central Valley. So we applaud Andrea and her team for the strategic thinking in rolling out this program, and we're very, very excited for what to come over the next year and a half or so through this program. So thank you for having us be part of this forum, and best of luck to the KDA-CC and all of the potential grant applicants out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Man, so much. It's an honor for you to be here, and thank you for acknowledging all the work we're equally doing to make the arts more powerful in the state of California. From here, I'm going to jump into the consultants who are helping us to facilitate the KDA Creative Core. We firmly believe in aligning ourselves with experts in the field, and I'm so delighted that we have several experts in various industries that are going to be here for not only us, but for you to lean on to ensure your successful path. So I'm going to jump over to our KDA Creative Core HR and legal team. Dr. Juanita Webb is here. I'll let you go first.
Thanks, Andrea. It's so exciting to be here, to believe we're actually at this point. Andrea and I have been talking about this for well over a year. And so it's really exciting to actually be here and be starting this process today. So my name is Dr. Juanita Webb. I have my own HR consulting firm here in the Bakersfield area. I've partnered with KDA for years, providing some services to them on the HR side, and now this opportunity to partner with the Creative Core as well. So I'm here to help answer questions about, hey, I've got to hire some employees. How do I do that? What are the ins and outs, or how do I, handle that? What's this I-9 that I need to complete for my employees? Just those basic questions that you might have as a grantee about how do we handle some of those HR questions? How do we handle those employee issues? And so that's what I'll be here to help with throughout the process. I'll be partnering with Rob Noriega, the legal side. We'll be presenting a webinar on the 17th. And so we look forward to having you there for that, to potentially answer questions for you or assist and give you some direction to get started with the HR and legal side. So thanks for involving us. We're looking forward to partnering and continuing in this process with the Core and all of the grantees.
Thank you, Dr. Webb. We're happy you're here. And then I'll send it over to Rob Noriega.
Thanks, Andrea. I'm Rob Noriega. I am a managing partner at the Bakersfield law firm of Young Wooldridge. I met Andrea and became involved with the organization last year. And I'm very pleased and looking forward to helping to provide legal support services to the organization. That will involve the paperwork process, virtual paper process for the grant applications. And I recognize how valuable that is to the community in promoting the arts. I unfortunately don't have an artistic bone in my body, but I'm hopeful that my association with the organization will help me develop an interest in the arts and find an artistic bone. And Juanita, I look forward to working with you as well as with Andrea. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. So Juanita and Rob, of course, make up our HR and legal team. We'll move into our next team, which is our finance team. And I will go on over to Danette Wolf first, who is our bookkeeper. Danette, we need to go ahead and unmute yourself. Sorry.
Hi, everyone. My
go.
name is Danette Wolf, and I have a company called Virtual Strength Bookkeeping. I've been associated with KDA for a few years now, doing their bookkeeping, and I look forward to handling the future side of this. And during our webinar on the 21st, I will be providing you with a short spreadsheet, so you'll be able to keep track of your expenses and be able to report on a timely manner. As Rob, I have no artistic balance or bone in my body. I am black and white. That's what the numbers are all about. And I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danette. I love the sense of humor that we have amongst our team, but the biggest takeaway from that is that we're all here to help, whether we're artistic or not. Going on over to Charlie McCarthy, our accountant.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here and to be able to get a chance to just, I guess, introduce ourselves and to talk about, what the future has. But I am a tax partner here at Brown Armstrong, and I've actually worked with KDA before they were KDA in doing their tax returns. I do, personal and business, but I do have a little bit of a specialty for nonprofit returns. And so for any questions that you may have about that, we're here to help. As Danette mentioned, we'll be having our webinar on the 21st. And so we'll talk more about, possibly the budget process. Maybe you've never had to file before, and this is going to be new for you. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting things that'll be coming up, and I'm very excited to be a part of it and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlie. So that is our finance team. And then we'll round out the rest of our consultants with the KDA Creative Core PR and marketing team. We'll go on over to Nancy Lynn Miller, our creative director.
Thank you. I'm Nancy Miller. I'm the principal of Posh Creative. This year I'm celebrating 16 years of providing graphic design and photography. I'm also a former dancer, and I've been with KDA since the very beginning. I am the KDA Creative Core creative director. I'm responsible for the new branding of KDA-CC, which covers logo design, color palette, print and digital layout, and just the general visual aesthetic of this exciting new entity. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And I apologize. I have to circle back to the finance team because I left out the bank. Glenda, my apologies in advance. Please welcome Glenda, who's part of our finance team.
You're totally fine. I thought I was going to get away. I am Glenda Garcia. I am a business banker lead with Mission Bank and also the banker for KDA Creative Core. Super excited to be on board with them and with you guys. I will also be a part, well, actually, unfortunately, I will not be able to attend the webinar on the 21st. However, I will have someone that will be taking my place so that Mission Bank could provide some insight and questions around anything banking related. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenda. Again, I'm sorry about that. So we'll go back to the PR and marketing team, and it is my honor to introduce to you Justin Salters.
Thank you, Andrea. My name's Justin Salters. I'm the founder of Hey Salty. We are a public relations and marketing firm, and together with my colleague and account supervisor on our team, Joel Parama, who I'll let introduce himself, we are providing the marketing and public relations outreach work for KDA Creative Corps. And we'll also be, during our webinar, sharing some best practices about how each of you can go ahead and drive programmatic outcomes through communications for your projects. Joel, if you want to introduce yourself.
Unmute, Joel.
Joel, I think you're muted right now. Yes, sorry. David, we still can't hear him. Now I see the mute icon next to Joel, so someone can unmute him. No. It's the first one, right? No, well. Anyway, that is Joel, everybody, and Joel is fantastic and will be doing much of the day-to-day account lead and account activity work for us. So let's see if we're able to go ahead and, nope, but anyway, it's going to be a pleasure to work with you all on your programs. And one of the things that we're excited about is when the grantees are named in May, and the programs is profiling and helping to promote the work that each of you are doing who receive a grant through the KDA Creative Corps. So that'll be coming, and we're excited about it and excited to meet you all along this journey.
We're going to give Joel one more chance to speak. Go ahead, Joel, the stage is yours. Well, we tried. That's okay. That's the nature of technology. We're all just rolling with it. But thank you, Joel. I can attest he is sitting in the room with me, and he does have words. So we'll go ahead and we'll move on through our next agenda item, which I'm sure is why many of you are here today. In addition to meeting us, it was imperative to us that we gave you the opportunity to learn more about the California Healthy Places Index, which is a integral component to the grant writing seminar. And we're so lucky that we have one of the greatest experts when it comes to the California Healthy Places Index with us today. Miss Helen from the Public Health Alliance of Southern California will be joining us, and she'll be giving you a in-depth overview of the California Healthy Places Index with a special focus on the Central Valleys. So Helen, this stage is yours. Thank you.
Hi, great, thanks. Wonderful to be here today. My name is Helen Dowling. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Director of Data Initiatives at the Public Health Alliance of Southern California, which is a coalition of 11 local health departments stretching from San Luis Obispo in the north down to San Diego and Imperial counties in the south. I'm also the project manager for the California Healthy Places Index project. So if you want to learn about the HPI, I'm the person that you want in the room with you today. So I do have some artistic bones in my body. I love the opportunity to be able to share my own creative pursuits as part of this. So while my day job is largely technical and I work in data, on the weekends, I actually pursue ikebana, which is a Japanese style of flower arranging, and I enjoy sewing and cooking and all kinds of sort of exciting artistic pursuits to fill up my free time.
Thank you, Helen, so much. So I did want to acknowledge that the ASL is available for anybody that is seeking translation services. And so with that, Helen, we will go ahead and send it back over to you if you'd like to get your presentation started.
Great, just a moment while I switch gears here. All right, great. So today I'm going to be giving you a crash course in the Healthy Places Index. So first, let me just give you an idea of what we're going to be covering today. I'm going to spend just about 10 minutes giving you an overview of what the Healthy Places Index does and what it contains. And then I also want to spend a few minutes talking about how you can use the HPI. With that, let's talk about what you'll be able to do by the end of today's session. So we're going to be using the California Healthy Places Index to identify quartile 1 neighborhoods. You'll better understand your communities, and then you can use this to inform your program design. So hopefully by the end of the session, you'll be able to navigate the HPI map, identify quartile 1 communities, and interpret HPI data and scores. So first, it'd be helpful for me to know just how familiar folks are with the HPI. Do you folks have access to the chat? Somebody give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down so I know.
Helen, not everybody has access to the chat, but if they want to enter into the Q&A, Whitney, who's moderating our Q&A, can maybe give us some answers from there.
Great, yeah, I can see that. But either way, regardless of your level of familiarity with the HPI, today's presentation will get you up to speed pretty quickly here. Great. So to introduce the HPI, there's really no better place to start than by sharing our shared value statement. This really guides the work that we do with the HPI and our work overall as public health practitioners. We at the Public Health Alliance believe that everyone deserves a fair and just opportunity to achieve good health and well-being. And we know to achieve that goal, we need to address and understand those factors that are driving health disparities that we see in our communities. More specifically, we need to promote policies and services that enable good health while seeking to remove systemic barriers to health. So our work with the Healthy Places Index specifically focuses on the underlying community conditions that impact well-being. So these are beyond the individual level characteristics and behaviors. These are what are called the social determinants of health. These are the factors that can either enable or hinder opportunities for good health from the time that we're born through all facets of life. So just as a really quick exercise to get you thinking in this frame of community conditions that impact health, I'm hoping folks can brainstorm some examples here. So if you can put that in the Q&A, an example of one or several of those community conditions that you think might impact our health and well-being. Yeah, access to medical care, sure. Air quality, absolutely. Education, access to local food, Yep, poverty and economic conditions, environmental issues. Great, yep. Isolation, poverty, transportation. Yeah, everybody is you're just right here. All of these are representative of the kinds of conditions that can impact health. It's also really important to recognize that these examples of community conditions can differ greatly from community to community across cities and across the state. And we know that these conditions are influenced by policy decisions that often reflect institutional and structural racism. It's critical for us to implement lasting systems change, and we do that by making communities healthier through upstream changes to these underlying community conditions and the policies that change them. So that's ultimately why we created the HPI. It's a tool built to help understand the community conditions of California communities and related policies. You can use the HPI to understand your communities, identify opportunities to improve community conditions, and prioritize neighborhoods, resources, and inform program design to reduce health disparities. I also want to talk a little bit about our race and place framing. We've introduced the concept of community conditions and the impact that where we live has on health outcomes, but we want to recognize that both place and race are important factors that have profound impacts on an individual's well-being. The HPI platform was designed to provide detailed data on both community conditions and race and ethnicity. And by doing so, it allows you to understand the cultural and historical context of your community on a deeper level, develop more equitable community-forward solutions, and better advocate for the needs of your communities. Since we launched HPI 3.0 we launched HPI 2.0 in 2018, so we're now on HPI 3.0 now. It has truly become the go-to data tool across multiple sectors in California to identify and respond to community needs in ways that keep growing and evolving. Every day, we are hearing about new ways that the HPI is being used to impact those upstream determinants of health, including this fantastic California Arts Council grant program. So some examples of other ways the HPI has been used is through active transportation funding, affordable housing and rental assistance programs, food security and nutrition assistance, climate-related investments. Many folks heard about the Healthy Places Index for the first time through the California Department of Public Health's COVID-19 Blueprint Health Equity metric, as well as many other examples. All told, we've seen over $2.3 billion that have been directed towards community investments, including $272 million of COVID-19 assistance to neighborhoods hit the hardest during the pandemic. We also have a website that details our use cases in more details. There's a link here. I'll be sharing out this presentation after the webinar, so you're able to take a look at these resources in more detail. All right, I want to take the last few minutes here before we dive into the map tool and talk about the components of the HPI. So there are three major pieces that make up the Healthy Places Index. The first is the index itself. This summarizes data on community conditions at the neighborhood level. This is what we're talking about when we talk about the HPI score, or the quartile that a community falls within. That comes from the index. Second is our policy action guides, which support moving data into action by providing policy recommendations. These policy action guides are available for every one of our 23 HPI indicators that make up the overall HPI score, as well as for several of our decision support layers. More on those in a minute. Lastly is our interactive map that brings together the index, policy action guides, and important data on community context, like measures of racial justice and health equity, all in one place. So when we refer to the interactive map, that's really the platform that brings our data and our policy action guides together, accessible through one website. The index itself combines 23 community characteristics, and those characteristics are many of the ones that you named in the chat earlier, things like access to healthcare, housing, education, and more. We measure these for every community in California, and we calculate a single indexed HPI score. The healthier a community, the higher the HPI score. So you see, you'll get an HPI score. It's expressed as a percentile rank, which is how that score compares to other communities in California. More on that in a minute. We have 23 indicators, as I shared. These are organized into 8 policy action areas. So these are categories of indicators. These are things like economic factors, education, neighborhood, transportation, and more. And on our website, you can see our complete list of HPI indicators and policy action areas if you want to dive deeper. More about the policy action guides. It's critical for us to be able to affect upstream change. And the way that we did that was providing actionable recommendations for how to improve those indicators contained within our HPI. We use evidence-based policy opportunities, and they provide a wealth of details for each policy opportunity or recommendation, including examples of sample ordinances, other places that have implemented things like that, as well as co-benefits too. So how this policy guide, or rather how this particular policy has impacts outside of the specific thing it's affecting. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So here, for example, I'm loading our homeownership policy guide. So in addition to getting information on what this indicator measures, as well as its connection to health, those of us in public health, we're familiar with how homeownership is connected to health, but perhaps if you're not in public health, we provide descriptions in plain language about how improving homeownership will impact health outcomes. What's more is you can see policies that can improve homeownership here. So here's just some details. You get a description of a given policy, some of those co-benefits that I mentioned before, as well as an evidence rating with evidence basis. And across all of our policy guides, which you can see located here, we have hundreds of actionable policy opportunities and recommendations. It's an incredible resource to help affect change in your communities. Last, let's talk about the MAP platform. So this is where our HPI scores and data, the map itself, and our policy guides, along with a suite of tools, all live. So we have it's a free interactive map, completely, you're able to access this freely. You can access the policy opportunities directly from the map tool, as well as view hundreds of additional measures of community context. So we're mapping not only the HPI score, but you can also map lots of other important contextual information as well. And there's lots of other features and functions to support your use of the HPI. We don't have time today for me to provide a detailed look at all of the additional features and functions on the HPI, but I'll send out this presentation that actually gives you a really in-depth overview, as well as examples of how to use some of the other features. All right. So before we get into the map, I want to give you a crash course on interpreting HPI data. We display and communicate our data in a way that's a little different than you may have seen before. So we use a positive frame, as I shared previously, which means that higher scores and higher percentile ranks correspond with healthier community conditions, and vice versa. Quartile 4 corresponds with our highest HPI scores and percentile ranks, and quartile 1 corresponds with our lowest HPI scores and percentile ranks. So as I said, all the measures on our map, including the HPI score, are expressed as a value with a percentile rank. So when you click on a neighborhood, you'll be shown something like this. So this will tell you that the employed indicator is ranked the 79.7th percentile with a value of 80.2%. A value is the numerical measure of an attribute or characteristic. So it can be used to compare against a specific standard or target. The percentile rank is how that value compares to all other values of that indicator or measure scaled 0 to 100. So going back, let's look at our more details about our employed information here. Employed is the indicator. 79.7 percentile is the percentile rank of the employed indicator in this neighborhood. It describes how this neighborhood compares to all other neighborhoods on the employed indicator. We can say that this neighborhood ranks higher on the employed indicator than 79.7% of other neighborhoods. It also ranks lower than 20.3% of other neighborhoods. And that value is the actual value of the employed indicator in this community. It means that 80.2% of the working age population has a job. So this is really critical to understand the difference between the value and the percentile. We provide both when you take a look at a community. So just keep this in mind that the value is the actual measure of the indicator and the percentile rank is how it compares to other communities on that measure. All right. So I already told you that we split our HPI into 4 quartiles from 1 to 4. Quartile 1, those areas on the map in dark blue correspond with percentiles 0 to 25. And those have the fewest health supportive community conditions or the least healthy community conditions. Communities in the 4th quartile, so those are going to be the dark green areas on the map, have the most health supportive community conditions. For the purposes of this grant, you're going to be looking for those HPI quartile 1 communities, those dark blue communities. All right, so now let's dive in. Great. So when you first load the HPI map, you'll see everything at the tract level, neighborhood level here. We do make our data available at different geographies. So for example, at the city or town level, as well as at the county level as well, along with legislative districts, state and local legislative districts, school districts, etc. But we always recommend that you look at the tract or neighborhood level geography wherever possible. You can navigate this map just like many other mapping tools. So that might mean entering an address, which you can do up here, or a city, or a county, or a zip code, and the map will zoom you straight to it. Or if you know the area that you're interested in looking in, you can just navigate the map by zooming in. You can pan and zoom quite easily. All right, so we're going to zoom in here to Merced, and we'll talk a little bit about what kinds of information you can get here, as well as how to interpret the information that you're seeing. So remember, you want to be looking at the tract view. That's that neighborhood level view here. And again, as I shared, we're interested in quartile 1 communities. So you can see on our legend here that corresponds with the 0 to 25th percentile. You can see we have a description here, less to more healthy community conditions, going from 0 to 100, dark blue to dark green, which means that the quartile 1 communities that are on this map now are all of these areas in dark blue. So these are all communities that when compared to the rest of California fall within the bottom quartile. So you might find areas on the map, and so actually here's one here. You might find areas on the map where you actually don't see any color at all. So these correspond with areas that don't have any data. There are a couple of reasons for this, one of which is that in order to ensure statistical stability and reliability, we excluded those communities that have fewer than 1,500 people or a group quarters. So those are things like nursing homes, dormitories, prisons, etc. The group quarters population greater than 50%. However, it's our recommendation, and other grant programs and other programmatic uses of the HPI have by default actually just assigned these no data communities as quartile 1 communities. So that's one way that this has been handled in the past, is that if it doesn't have any data, these can be treated as though they fall within quartile 1. So even if the neighborhood or area that you want to work in doesn't have data, it may still be possible in order to receive funding or resources, even if we don't have the specific data available here. Great. So let's go ahead and zoom back in, and we're going to click on a community, and then I'm going to walk you through all of the information that you're able to access with it. All right, so we'll take a look here at this community. So from what I shared before, the HPI score here is within the 11th percentile. We already know it's a quartile 1 community because it's dark blue. And here you can see how this specific tract actually compares. So our tract is the term for this neighborhood level data. You can actually see how this tract compares to both the city and town that it's within, as well as the county as well. So you can see that this tract is actually doing a little worse compared to the city or town, as well as compared to the county. But importantly, that's not the whole story. So while this tract only has healthier community conditions than 11% of other California tracts, our positive framing really makes it easy for you to identify community assets as well as those opportunities, kind of those areas for improvement. Scrolling down to our policy action areas, this is where you can explore those individual factors that impact health at the community level. So you can see here we have little thumbnail visualizations, very similar to the overall HPI score visualizations that tell you how this area, so this grouping of indicators, compares to other communities. We can see here economic. This is also in sort of bottom quartile here, but education is closer to the median. You can also see comparatively social bottom quartile, but transportation, neighborhood, these are in the second quartile, so a little better. And you can get more detail by clicking on each of these policy action areas and exploring them in more depth. So here you can see, for example, in education that actually preschool enrollment is quite good. So we're in the third quartile here with about 70% of preschool age children in school. This represents a community asset. So this is something that's going well in this community. You can also see, for example, here, looks like automobile access, also really good. So about 97.2% of the population have access to an automobile. But conversely, something like active commuting is relatively low. So this also falls in the bottom quartile. This might represent an opportunity for improvement, for example. Of our neighborhood factors, we have park access here. So you can see this is just above the median comparatively. Tree canopy. So this is a place, tree canopy is a measure that's falling within the bottom quartile compared to other communities. And this might represent sort of an opportunity for improvement. You might be some of the measures that are available here with the some of these indicators that comprise the HPI score might be immediately understandable. So things like home ownership, that makes sense what that is. But what about housing habitability, for example? So if you're not quite sure what housing habitability refers to, you can click through these little arrows here, allow you to get more information on individual indicators. So this tells you what this indicator measures. So housing habitability measures the percent of households with basic kitchen facilities and plumbing. And it also gives you, I told you, through our policy guides, we provide an in-depth connection to health. So how housing habitability is connected with health. We provide a short version of that right here within our indicator details panel. So it tells you how housing habitability is connected with health outcomes, and you can access policy opportunities related to this indicator. So if you have, for example, let's take a look at one of our indicators that's fairly low here. So employed, that's a pretty low measure here. We can look at policy opportunities for how we might improve that. So while I showed you our standalone website that includes all of our policy opportunities in kind of a full screen navigable format, you can also access them directly from our map. So here you can see, again, Connection to Health. This is the full length version of that, as well as some ideas for where you might want to start in order to improve employment in this community. It also gives you these categories of policy opportunities. Each one has a host of individual policies. And as I shared with you before, you can get more details on the individual policy opportunities, see its evidence rating, if it has any co-benefits as well. So this is a really great opportunity to identify some potential pathways for improvement. And you can access this really right from within the map. You don't even have to leave this website. Great. So the HPI score is one component, but it's important that we look at other pieces as well. So while we provide all of our policy, we provide, in addition to the HPI score and our policy action area measures, as well as our individual indicators, all of which are important to explore and to identify where those assets and opportunities lie. A core component of our race and place frame is to make sure that you are understanding the demographic and historical background in this community. So we're going to scroll down to the bottom, past the policy action areas and the individual indicators, and you'll see this racial justice and health equity panel. This gives you a snapshot of the demographics in this community. So the stacked bar chart here tells you that about 19% of the population identifies as Asian alone. You can see Black or African American, 5.4%, Hispanic or Latino of any race, 64%, as well as white alone, 10%, two or more races, 1.4%. So that's one component. We can see if this is a fairly diverse community, but you can also discover actual detailed ancestry information, as well as tribal affiliation if you have an American Indian population in your community. And this is really critical. These categories, for example, Hispanic or Latino, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, and Asian, actually conceal a lot of variation in different communities. And the reason why it's important to get ancestry level information, which is accessible just by clicking on any one of these categories, you can see, for example, that nearly 62% of the population of the Asian alone population is Hmong. That's really important information to know because it can help guide your interventions. It can ensure that you are providing culturally appropriate messaging and identifying trusted messengers too in order to deliver those messages. There's a lot of variation just within this community. Providing and seeing this level of detail is really critical to help inform your program or project design. So in addition to providing that detailed breakdown for the Asian alone population, we also provide that for American Indian where it's available, where that community is available, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders, as well as Hispanic or Latino of any race. So here, this is a community that's about 99.5% identifying as coming from Mexico, but there is a small Central American and Salvadoran population as well. So again, this information is really critical to help hone your intervention, your program design, to really make sure it's culturally appropriate for the communities that live within this neighborhood. We also have other features and functions, which I don't have time to dive into today, that actually help you use this data in more detail, including being able to find some of these small or geographically dispersed communities, as well as being able to view many of our indicators actually disaggregated by race or ethnicity, since we know that there are different experiences of community conditions based on race and ethnicity. So it's important supplemental data that are also available. Great. And then last but not least, I want to highlight our equity indicators. So we provide 3 measures of equity here. One is a race and ethnicity diversity index, which is a rough measure of how diverse this community is. At the county level, that's why you see NA here. At the county level, we provide a diversity of electeds. So whether the elected officials are representative of the race and ethnicity demographics in this county, measures that. And then importantly, we also provide a measure where available of whether or not this tract was historically redlined. So we don't have this data for all of California. It's a matter of which records have been digitized. But where we do have this information, you'll see yes or no. And we can see that historically this community hasn't been redlined. But there are quite a number of neighborhoods and communities that have. And that can really help explain why we see sort of considerable inequities in community conditions as well. It really helps tell a more complete story of this neighborhood. So again, it's important to look at all of these different components. Everything from our overall HPI score, which gives you a snapshot of the overall community conditions in this neighborhood. And again, those are those dark blue communities. Those fall within the 0 to 25th percentile, and they appear as dark blue on our map. You can get more detail about the overall policy action areas. So these are kind of our categories of indicators and how they contribute to the overall score. So you can see there likely to be some community assets here in education, because this is closer to the median, and perhaps some areas and opportunities for improvement would fall within our economic policy action area, or perhaps within our social or healthcare access. You can expand each of our policy action areas to get more detail on individual indicators. By clicking through, as I shared before, you can see exactly what this indicator is measuring, how it's connected to health, and policy opportunities to improve this indicator. You can use this to really track down and highlight those community assets and find those opportunities or potential areas for improvement. And then you can get more information about the community and demographic profiles by looking under our racial justice and health equity section. This helps to hone your proposals and program designs to be culturally sensitive and appropriate, and choosing those trusted messengers and adjusting your interventions appropriately for the community. You can also get critical context on diversity measures, as well as whether this community had been historically redlined. Taking together our understanding place-based factors, as well as race and ethnicity, and that historical context can overall give you a really great picture of this community. And while the data can tell you a lot, I will always tell you to go back to the community themselves. We cover a lot of data here we cover a lot of data to quantify the factors that impact health, but we don't capture the qualitative lived experience of people in these communities. And their word is just as important as the data that we are able to display here. So it's critical that if you have the opportunity to ground truth this information, to get those stories and experiences from the communities, and to ensure that your priorities are co-created with the community, that really should be your next step. All right, so with that, I've given you kind of a crash course in using the HPI. I will be sharing this presentation out with more details. So you'll see here we have lots of tutorials and links to more information available, as well as contact information for me. So if you have any questions about using the Healthy Places Index, you can get in touch with me or my team. Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciated the opportunity to be here today, and I hope this is helpful.
Thank you, Helen. Such wonderful information. I've sat in on several sessions with Helen so far, and every time I learn something new. So thank you, Helen, for being a wealth of information, for being an expert in the field. As Helen mentioned, we will be sharing the information out. It will be available on the website as well. Should you have further questions with Helen, you can connect with her directly to get those questions answered. So speaking of questions, Helen, if you're okay to stick around for about another couple of moments, just in case we have some questions that are directly HPI related. I'm going to send it over to Whitney, who's been collecting your questions in the queue. And this is a time where we're going to be able to answer some of those. I understand many of the questions might be some of the same, so hopefully everybody is listening, and of course with the intent that we are here, we are available for you beyond this session. So Whitney, I'll turn on over to you and get some of those questions answered.
Okay, thank you everybody for all of your questions. We have put them in a queue, and I'm going to go directly to a couple of the questions specifically for the Healthy Places Index. So Helen, hang tight for a second. We have a couple of questions directed towards you. So can you explain, Helen, a little bit more on what redlining a community means?
Yeah, so this is really important, and I'm only going to be able to give you just high-level overview. So redlining was a policy that was in effect from 1935 to 1940 that essentially directed loans for homeowners. And it essentially said that communities that were literally colored in red on maps were not areas that they wanted to lend to. This policy, the impact of this policy is that it really prevented many communities of color from actually being able to purchase and own homes, because those areas that were painted in red on the map were typically communities of color. And that has actually had repercussions over the decades, because that's prevented generational transfer of wealth. If you weren't able to purchase your home, you weren't able to gift it to children or relatives in order to transfer some of those assets accrued during your lifetime. So I'm, again, super high level. I really suggest you look into it, because it explains a lot of what we see in inequitable community conditions today.
Thank you. And Helen, again, a question for you. How often is the data on the HPI updated? For example, a community who might have been part of a wildfire within the last 6 to 9 months. Is it updated current to reflect people going through situations like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our HPI, we update our overall HPI score once every 3 to 5 years. And the reason for this is because for us to get data at that neighborhood, that census tract level, actually requires pooling multiple years of data available. So we're limited a little bit by the data availability. So we wouldn't be able to capture, for example, the immediate impacts of things like COVID-19 or like a wildfire, but we are able to capture those cumulative impacts over time in sort of the 3 to 5 year update schedule.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions we have directly for you, Helen. We so appreciate your time. If you would like to stay on, you are welcome to do so. And we appreciate you making yourself available if people should have additional questions after this webinar. I do have a couple other questions as far as how does this data relate to my grant proposal, right? How am I using this information to have an eligible grant proposal? So Andrea, can you speak on that for us?
Well, my initial response is to sign up for the seminar on Friday, where I am going to be leading you through the process of creating your proposal, focusing on one of the focus areas, one of 4, as well as the HPI and how your project is going to shift attitudes of readiness with respect to the Healthy Places Index and the art form that you're using to create a competitive grant that can truly impact future change. So that's my initial answer to that. Sign up for Friday. But this grant, this project, the Creative Core is all about using this grant, this project, this program is all about using the arts to improve the quality of life for Californians living in the Central Valleys. Helen gave us a great example of some inequities that we are experiencing as Central Californians. And these projects are going to be used to utilize artists and arts to change shifts of attitudes and impacts within those communities. So I'm going to dive into this much more deeper on Friday, but for now, get cozy with the HPI, get cozy with the KDA Creative Core guidelines, start to let your ideas marinate, and I'll be here for you on Friday to help you create those proposals.
So generally speaking, for people today who are wanting more information, look at the HPI data, look at the map, find that community area, something, it can be economic, social, we have education in there, one of those areas that falls in that lowest quartile, and that's where you want to start looking. Okay, thank you. We have a question a little bit more about the budget as far as if there is an artist, let's say I'm a nonprofit organization and I want to hire an artist to serve my lowest quartile HPI community, but this artist lives in Los Angeles. Can this artist still fall within my grant proposal?
Yes. So all artists must be California based. However, they do not have to live in your community. Funding may not go to people outside of California. You cannot pay for an artist or a nonprofit organization that you are collaborating with to be outside of the state of California. Because we are using California taxpayer funds, that money has to go directly to Californians. So to break this down a little more, absolutely, you can use an artist outside of the Central Valleys. That artist can come from the Bay Area, they can come from San Diego. However, the project must focus on one of those 14 counties the KDA Creative Core is serving.
Great, thank you. And another question is about the grant application itself and the character limits for the responses. So is there a specific character limit that they should be looking for? So we are encouraging people to, put their questions and answers in a Word document so that they can track that, make sure you have the correct character limit, and then copy and paste that into the portal. So once I get to that point, what character limit should I be looking for?
So spoiler alert, when you get into the grant portal, you're going to notice that some of the characters have been upped. And we're going to go ahead and get our PDF updated as well for the exact same reason. Once we got into the grant portal and we started entering our words and our character limits, we realized that you're going to need a little bit more. So we have upped those. We are going to update the grant guidelines so you know exactly what questions will have an increase in the characters and the word count.
Great, thank you so much. We also had a question on awarding. So will an award be made to each county, either through organization or individual artist, or is it just depend on who applies? How is that going to be decided?
So there is no set criteria as to how many counties, how many individuals, or how many organizations will receive an award. First and foremost, this is a competitive process. So you want to ensure that when you get into that grant portal, your application is absolutely solid in terms of your ideas and how you're going to execute those ideas. So again, it is a competitive process. There is no guidelines in terms of every county is going to get an award, or this many individuals will get awarded, or this many nonprofits will get awarded. It's a competitive process. And I want to acknowledge the 6 areas that are going to be reviewed and ranked. And I'm going to talk about these more on Friday, but the elements that are going to be reviewed and ranked and that are going to be essentially adjudicating your proposals is going to be based on one of those 4 program areas. It's going to be based upon a very clear project design. You'll be adjudicated on that artist involvement from every step of your project. You're going to be adjudicated on the impact of the California Healthy Places Impact Index. You're going to be adjudicated on the community engagement, and you're also going to be adjudicated on your budget. So having clear, finite ideas of how you're going to get to the finish line based upon a certain set of ideas is key here, because it is a competitive process. There is no set guidelines on who or what will get the funding. At the end, it'll be reviewed and it will be ranked, and it'll be based upon those that bring together the most finite and clear ideas.
Thank you. And Helen, you're still with us, correct? We do have a couple additional HPI questions. So one question is, if an organization is serving people with disabilities, how would they explain their fit within the HPI, or is it just demographic data? Is there a section for disability within the HPI?
Yeah, that's a great question. So while we don't include a measure of disability within the Healthy Places Index itself, and that's because our focus is on community conditions, we actually do provide, I mentioned that we have several hundred additional community context layers, and those include some measures of disabled population. Those are available within under the tools menu. There's a view indicators function, and then our decision support layers. And under the decision support layers, there is a number of different measures of physical disability, which you can then map and kind of view alongside the Healthy Places Index. So you can use that to provide additional context for your application.
Thank you. And one more question was, how does the HPI inform the arts programs to be developed with Creative Core funding?
I think that's less of a question for me.
Andrea, do you want to touch on that one? You're muted, Andrea. Andrea? Andrea, you are muted. She's still going.
Andrea, we can't hear you.
This is just a perfect example of how passionate Andrea is. She's so in her answer. But we will circle back to this question when she is finished speaking. Someone had a question on character count. So when we're doing character limits in the grant proposal, make sure that it's characters and not word count. Okay, so it will be counting spaces and punctuation on your application. And we had another question about focus areas. Can we address more than one focus area? Say, for example, I want to address social justice, and I'm also going to address focus area 3 on civic engagement. Yes, you can incorporate more than one focus area, but you only need to do one focus area is the minimum. Okay, so we have that. And we also had another question, can our project be done in Spanish? We welcome that. That would be serving communities within that lowest quartile of the Healthy Places Index. And we would welcome any projects in other languages, ASL. I know people have talked about serving communities with disabilities, and that is all encouraged as well. If an organization address is in another state, but collective members are based in California, and all California artists are employed through this grant, could the organization still apply?
As long as there is a California-based address, that is integral. And then just going forward, thinking down the road when it comes to your taxes and all of that, that has to be California-based. So as long as you can prove that there is a California residency for the artist or the nonprofit applying, that is key for the eligibility.
Thank you. And Andrea, can you give a brief summary of the question you just answered so wonderfully that we were not able to hear?
I'm so sorry I was on mute. I got through the answer and then I realized I was on mute. I apologize, everybody. So let me just give a basic example of how KDA in the past has used the arts to impact the quality of life of people living in Kern County. So we have a program that is called Books in Motion. That is a program that uses movement and dance to improve literacy rates for children living in Kern County. So based upon race and place, using Helen's terminology, we're able to understand the literacy rates of children living in the different areas of Kern County, from Mojave to Delano to Bakersfield. We have worked with our collaborative partners from the Kern Literacy Council and the Kern County Library to create a program that is essentially a touring library of books using movement and dance to enhance the interest of children in literacy. So the program is geared for children kindergarten to 3rd grade who are early readers. And what we essentially do is we contract with artists to bring books to life at various Kern County libraries throughout the county. And there's a whole series of assessment that is being utilized to gauge children's interest in reading, to gauge children's interest in the arts. And we have found over 7 years that Books in Motion has improved not only literacy rates for children in Kern County, but it's also heightened interest in the arts. And more importantly, it has improved the quality of life for people living in Kern County.
Thank you so much for that additional response. We did have one more question. If I'm planning to work with public schools in my county, the school itself is located in a quartile 2 area, but the students attending the school live in a quartile 1 area, would my project still be eligible? So let's say I'm doing a program at a quartile 2 school, but the students' addresses fall in quartile 1. How would I go about making sure I'm qualifying?
That comes to finessing the writing. So when you get into that community engagement component of the grant portal, that's going to be your chance to really explain that the people that are being impacted by the project are living in the first quartile. While the location might be in the 2nd quartile, the difference is the people that are being impacted are the first quartile.
Thank you. I hope that clears that up. We do have some questions about budget, just the difference between what can I use my 80% versus my 20% on. Could you just give a little overview of the difference between the 80% paying the artist and what the other 20% could be covering?
So the 80-20 split is directed by the state, and we are under contractual guidance, contract to ensure that your budgets are following the state's guidelines. So first and foremost, the KDA Creative Corps, and in fact, the California Creative Corps program is a jobs creator for artists, which is why 80% of your budget must be spent on artist salaries or to pay artists to do the projects. What the artist does with that 80% is at their discretion. However, in your budget, you must show that 80% is being paid to the artist for the work they are doing. That other 20% can be used for program implementation and design, supplies, insurance, marketing. Any of those elements that you need to be successful are in that 20% of the actual project implementation. And I want to draw your attention to that really important document of what we do not fund. Again, we are using taxpayer money, California taxpayer money, so we are mandated by the state as to how those funds can be spent. You can find those on the website. I will be diving deeper into them on Friday, but there is a certain set of expenses that you cannot spend the California Creative Corps award on.
Great. And I do also want to make sure that everybody is accessing the grant guidelines PDF on our website. So kdacreativecorps.org, and right on that homepage is our grant guidelines PDF. This is super helpful because it also while it says all of the eligibility, budget requirements, who we can fund, what can be funded, what can't be funded, you will also find the exact LOI questions and grant application questions. So you can see, before you even get started, you can see what is going to be expected as far as questions and answers goes. And I think that will also help you to kind of guide, what is going to qualify for this grant. We do have a question on defining an artist. What is the definition of an artist? Could it be a community member creating art as part of the project? So Andrea, can you clarify that difference for individual artists? Who can qualify as an individual artist?
So in the grant guidelines, we do notate the different types of arts disciplines, from dance to music to theater to filmmaking, indigenous arts, basket weaving, podcasts. There are several arts initiatives that are outlined in the grant guidelines. As long as your work falls under the creative lens of any of those, or even beyond, there is a section for other that you can fill in. Likely those are going to be eligible. I also want to note, though, that when you get into the grant portal, you do have to provide some history on the artist's work experience. So that might be anywhere from, creating choreography for your local high school to doing poetry at your poetry stand-up night at your local coffee shop. All of these things are helping you to build your resume as an artist. So as you're going out there and you're trying to find your artist, or you're trying to kind of create your work history as an artist, we want you to acknowledge everything that you've done in your creative landscape. So I hope that's helpful, Whitney, for the individual artist classifications.
Yes, that did answer the question. So for example, if I'm a recording engineer and I'm going to make music, I'm an artist and I would qualify as an individual artist. Now, if I have a recording studio as a business, I would not qualify if I'm applying as my recording studio business, unless it was a 501c3, but I would qualify as Whitney Pasquale, a recording engineer, as an individual artist, and my business is completely separate from my grant proposal. So I hope that clarifies a little bit for you guys. We do have another question. If the grant is for specific dates, which it is, May 1st, 2023 through May 1st of 2024, how can we relate that to achieving the grant goal and creating jobs and employment? Using W-2, not independent contractors, do we use the independent contractors counting towards the goal for improving employment? So there's just some questions about taxes and how they might achieve that within those specific dates, since it is overlapping tax years.
So yes, so it's mindful to be aware of these dates, May 1 of 23 to May 1 of 24. Those are the execution dates at which your project is to start and also wrap up. And with respect to the longevity of the program, there is interim reporting. So halfway through your grant, you will be reporting to KDA, and in effect, we will be reporting to the state those outcomes that you have outlined, those goals that you have outlined in your project. You'll need to report to us midway through how you are achieving those goals and those outcomes. So you're able to provide it to us in a quantitative matter. We hired 3 artists to execute this project, or even a qualitative manner. We're already seeing attitudes of readiness shift with respect to the understanding of water conservation in my community. Likewise, on the other end, there will be a final reporting process where you will have to wrap up your project, your year-long project, and tell us quantitatively and qualitatively how you achieved the success, the goals, the outcomes, the impacts that you had outlined in the beginning, how you met those, and the exact data points that were achieved. Those will be reported to us in the end as well. But again, we will be guiding you through this. We will be asking you those questions. We will be ensuring that those are loaded into your grant applications before we even announce any winners later this spring.
Yes, so we will be supporting your process of figuring out the qualitative and quantitative data that you will want to gather once your project is funded. And we do have a question about organizations applying and how they will use their artists and how they will submit that on their application. For example, I'm a nonprofit applying and I'm going to hire a musician as part of my project. Do I need to already know who that musician is and submit their resume or their bio as part of my application? Or as part of my application, can I say, my organization is going to do a call to artists to hire a musician for my project?
Good question. Yes. So when you're in the LOI component of this process, your information can be a little more loose because we understand that you're still trying to notate your ideas and get a firm understanding of your projects. However, when you get to the grant application, we want to stress that your project is as clearly realized and finite as possible. So as long as you're able to make the case, whether you have already chosen the artist or you're going to go down the road of a call to artist, as long as your process is extremely clear and how you're going to get to the finish line, how you're going to get towards the end of achieving your goals and your outcomes and your impacts, as long as that is clearly defined, that's likely going to be a strong application versus something that's very loose. Oh, I'm not really sure if I'll do this, or maybe I think we'll do this. No, when you get to the grant application, it has to be absolutely clearly defined on how you're going to get to that endpoint.
Thank you so much. If a program runs virtually, can the artist record their work so we can mass introduce the art, or does it have to be a live in-person project?
Both. As long as you're impacting people living in the lowest quartile of the Healthy Places Index, that is key. Absolutely, if you have a live component, if you have a virtual component, as long as the focus is on the audience and how you are impacting them, both are absolutely viable eligibilities.
Okay, thank you. And people are just asking like examples of projects that would qualify. So a community dance event, yes, this could qualify, and we highly encourage this type of project in a grant application. Want to make sure that you're checking that HPI map, that you are making sure that your community served falls within that lowest quartile on the Healthy Places Index. You are not doing a community event that is ticketed. So this is something that you're offering to your community for free. The artist is still getting paid within that 80% of the grant budget. So there's no worries about funding the event, but you're not able to collect any compensation from the community that is participating in the event. So it's going to be very good for you to attend the additional webinar in our series, because Andrea and other members of our team are going to help you guys continue brainstorming and really building what your program is going to look like and how you're going to best serve the community that you have chosen. And Andrea, can you just chime in about the ticketing for events and things that are going to be part of their projects?
Absolutely. So for the longevity of the project, May 1 of 23 to May 1 of 24, the intent is that the artist is being paid through the project. So should you have a final performance, or maybe there's a podcast, or maybe there is some sort of produced art at the end of your project, as long as that final production is created before May 1 of 24, we encourage that final product to be free and available to the public. Reason being is because it is not necessarily in the best interest to be collecting revenue on top of a grant. And that is in the eyes of the state, that is in the eyes of legislation that is created by the state, and we are beholden to abide by those rules. However, we also believe in artistic integrity. So if you are a playwright or or you are a producer of some sorts, or you are a choreographer and you have an interest of allowing that art to live beyond the ramifications of that timeline, you are absolutely able to take that and move with it into May of 25 or June of 24. And maybe you do want to start collecting revenue on that artistic production. However, we want to encourage that if it is something that is being produced within the timeline of the grant, we encourage that to be a free component of your event. And then after you wrap up that timeline, you are more than welcome to take it into the public sphere and charge ticketing fees, podcast fees, whatever it is, to enhance your revenue.
Thank you for your confirmation on that. And we have a question about participants once the project is being implemented. So do all participants need to be within the lowest quartile, or as long as I'm focusing and my target audience is people within the lowest quartile, can people not in the lowest quartile also attend and participate?
Yes, as long as the focus is on those living in the lowest quartile, we also acknowledge that as just basic human beings, we all integrate not based upon our backgrounds, but we just all happen to be living in similar locations. And while the focus should be on the lowest quartile, we understand that people are going to come from all different areas to also participate in your projects.
Great. Thank you so much for clarifying that. I think that is very helpful. We did have one more question about the individual artist pay. So if I'm an individual artist and I'm applying for the grant, I'm going to do a dance program, and I also want to have live music, provide my music for my dance class. Do I need to include that additional artist in my grant application? Or can I use the 80% of the money that pays me as the individual artist to then pay the musician?
So the 80% is to be used to pay an artist or artists. So if you have several artists that you anticipate paying through your grant, yes, you would need to build them into that 80%. So maybe not one is getting 80%, maybe there's 5 getting 80%. But I want to also acknowledge that maybe some of you are actually creating projects that have a larger expense than that $300,000. Maybe you're going to be using the KDA Creative Core grant funding to supplement a larger project that you might be creating. And so when you get into the budget component of the grant application, there's going to be a specific question that is asking you if this is to be KDA Creative Core funded. So for example, if you're only planning to pay one artist out of the KDA Creative Core and you have another bucket of funding that's going to be paying other artists, you're going to indicate that in the budget. Again, individual artists can apply for up to $150,000. Organizations can apply for up to $300,000. However, we recognize you might be creating a project that costs a lot more, and you're hoping that the Creative Core is going to subsidize some of those costs. In the budget, when you get into the grant portal, that is your opportunity to explain whether or not the individuals involved in your project will be KDA Creative Core funded or not.
And a follow-up question on that, if I'm an individual artist and I'm hiring the musician, can we each apply for our own individual grants and work together?
Can you say that one more time, Whitney?
Sure. So I'm an individual artist, same dance program scenario, and my musician is going to be providing the music for the same program. Can we each apply as individual artists who are collaborating, or must it fall under one grant application?
One project will be considered. So 2 artists cannot apply for the same project. However, 2 artists could potentially be used for 2 different projects. So I want to acknowledge that while there are 2 grantees in our service area, the KDA Creative Core and the United Way of Merced. United Way of Merced is only contracted to serve 3 counties. However, the KDA Creative Core is contracted to serve all 14 counties. With that said, KDA and United Way of Merced will be connecting once we close our grant applications to ensure that people are not receiving a grant from the KDA and also from the United Way of Merced. So just to reiterate, two individuals cannot apply for the same project. Therefore, I'm a dancer, I'm a musician, dancer's applying for said project, and musician is applying for same said project. However, two artists can be used for separate projects. I'm an organization. I acknowledge that I really want to use this poet, and I'm another organization, and I definitely want to use that poet as well, but they're two separate projects. That is eligible.
Okay, and we have reached an hour and a half of everybody's time. So I have received questions, and if there's anything that didn't get answered, I feel like we've kind of touched on the broad base of everybody's questions. If you have additional questions, please reach out to us via our email, which is bonjour@kdacreativecorps.org, bonjour@kdacreativecorps.org, and we will be happy to assist you and answer any additional questions you have. We know you probably have your brain filled with all these different questions and thoughts and ideas. So we do encourage you again to please continue to register and attend for the follow-up webinars that will be taking place. Our next one will be Friday, February 10th, and the last one will conclude on February 24th.
Thank you, Whitney. Yes, just reiterating, please reach out to us. I'd like to also announce that starting Friday, we're going to be launching into our office hours. So once we get through the webinar on Friday, we will launch office hours where you can sign up to have specialized time with individuals from our team. It will likely be me to begin, but if you have questions that I maybe cannot answer, I'm going to send you over to another expert on our team to ensure we get those questions asked. So, or answered, I should say. So stay tuned for when we launch office hours. You'll be able to sign up for a designated 15-minute session with us, and we will be sure to get those questions answered. Again, just reiterating, we are here alongside of you. We're not walking ahead of you. We want everybody to be successful in this process, whether it's your first time applying for a grant or you are an expert grant writer. We are absolutely here to help you. So with that said, I think we will wrap up. It was a pleasure to have all of you here today. We look forward to seeing many more of you on Friday. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon. Bye.